Greetings, everybody. It is I, the Nomad, coming to you live from the wastelands of the internet. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is something a bit new that I've been trying to start now. I figure, what the heck, since I got to keep myself busy until I locate another form of more, how do I say this? I don't want to say useful employment, but useful employment. Okay. Um, as I go through things, so I'll start some, just a quick look around the news at noon and see how things basically go. We'll try this out and see how this works. Hope that you're all having a wonderful day so far. But for the news, let's get started, shall we? Disney World empty as Americans fear tourism is finished in Florida. Oh, really? Disney World has become a ghost town this summer, with visitors sharing different theories about what might be behind the quiet scenes at the popular theme park. There has been significant turmoil at Disney World recently, with the cherished attraction closing permanently after 54 years of operation. But now visitors are noticing another dramatic change at the popular resort as the destination is seemingly becoming deserted. Right? So basically, they closed an attraction. Reports are surfacing that the iconic theme park has turned unusually quiet this summer, with guests offering theories about the potential causes. The situation was recently brought to light by a TikTok user called The Noble Ways, who documented his recent Disney World visit to express his observation about Florida happenings. Throughout his weekend stay, he maintained that Disney World was almost completely empty. The grim scenes at Disney World followed several months that saw multiple attractions at the theme park closed down for good. It comes as an iconic American city also is said to be dying after tourism numbers plunged a staggering 11%. So 89% are still there. I'm at the Magic Kingdom right now. This place is a tomb. Literally, nobody here. There is no wait time for anything. Space Mountain, walk on. Haunted Mansion, walk on. Pirates of the Caribbean, walk on. The longest I have seen a wait time for was Seven Dwarfs today, right, is 30 minutes. Peter Pan's flight up to 30 minutes, but everything is walk on all day long. I don't know what's going on. It's Labor Day weekend. It should be crowded. It should be packed normally. Okay. Well, let's talk about some things that have been going on recently, and I don't care about anybody else's opinion, all right, as far as other visitors going, well, why do you think this is? Why do you think this is? First of all, the problem Disney has is they lost the Disney magic. Bob Iger has killed the Disney magic. Oh, no, man. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Okay, I'm just going to be real blunt. Bob Iger decided to jack up price after price after price after price after price, chasing what's known as whales, right? The people who can afford the big Disney experience. And he chased that to the exclusion of what Disney Magic was all about, which was Walt Disney producing theme parks that the average kid could go to, that all children could come to. That's what Disney was for. It was for the kids. See, Bob Iger was chasing whales. He didn't care about the kids. And he didn't care about families either. And in the process of doing so, right, he pandered to his own proclivities. He took it upon himself, all right, to change the culture of Disney completely away from a wholesome child experience. Instead, even in the children's area, you have frickin' Cinderellas with beards and mustaches walking in on women's restrooms. You had all sorts of crap trying to be pushed down your throat, all right, to serve the LGBTQ community because the whales, the people who delved into their eccentricities because they can afford it, didn't have a problem with that. Or had plenty of money to delve into their personal adult driven degeneracy. And that's what they did. And once people started to really catch hold of this, the idea of going there to these trips became less and less of an option that people wanted to go through. Now, there's also the fact that at this point in time, whether people want to believe it or not, there is a downturn in the economy around the world, worldwide. But see, fewer and fewer people, more and more people were seeing the warts on Mickey's ass. Mickey decided to no longer cover up. Modesty in America has always been a bit shaky, all right, throughout our history. But it has gotten to the point now where there's no such virtue called modesty anymore. Okay? And this is a problem for people who are trying to raise kids and all of a sudden are being asked, why is Jane kissing Janet? Why isn't she kissing Mark? Why is Mark kissing Fred? And what the hell's going on with Pluto? Anyway, this is where it was going. And then on top of it, okay, they were jacking up the price, jacking up the price, jacking up the price, jacking up the price to get as much money every day as they possibly could, to the point where the only people who could enjoy themselves were the people who had lots of money. So, and what they did is they basically said, yeah, you can still come in. You don't have to spend the extra money, but if you give us even more thousands of dollars, we'll move you up in these lines so you can do the rides for free, or the rides early with everybody else. Shouldn't say for free, but you get ahead of everybody in the lines. You don't have to wait for the experience, and they did it intentionally because Bob Iger didn't care, and neither did Michael Eisner, who started a lot of this stuff. But they didn't care about keeping Disney for kids. Now let's top this off with other bad business decisions that Disney has made. We're going to close certain rides. We're going to close Song of the South. Why? Well, because it's stereotype racism now, and we don't agree with stereotype racism now in their minds. They act as if that aspect of America never existed, both good and bad. Oh, there is nothing good about racism in America. And I'm not saying that. But the South wasn't just about racism. Yes, it was an overlay. And yeah, it was something that needed to be overcome and defeated. There's no doubt about that. But the people who overcame it and defeated it aren't the people who are screaming about it today. They weren't the ones fighting for justice. In fact, they're the ones fighting against it, even now, to keep racism alive. But I digress. Song of the South included some songs and stuff that were important to understand how people overcame the daily drudgery, the daily tragedy of being a slave. I don't think I could have survived it. I'll be perfectly frank with you. I don't think most people today understand what it would have taken to survive as a slave back in those days. Yet those people were tough enough to do it. They were mentally tougher than even I am to endure that kind of life, knowing and expecting at some point there is a better road ahead of us down the road, and to carry that optimism, all right, throughout their lives. And that's what one of the things that Song of the South was all about. The Tar Baby, Brer Rabbit. Brer Rabbit was all about fooling and keeping the overseer at bay, tricking him into doing what you wanted to survive. You threw all that away. Because of what was necessary for people to survive in those times. Well, we have nothing to learn from them. That's what you're saying. So Disney went down this road and closed a number of different theme parks, trying to play the new modern age kind of thing. That's now becoming obvious where it was really headed. Okay, it's headed for dystopia. But it's been that going that way for a while. You can say that Disney's chickens are coming home to roost. What's going on in another story? Germany plans for 1,000 wounded troops per day in a case of conflict with Russia. Berlin, Germany. Germany's armed forces are planning how to treat a potential 1,000 wounded troops a day, all right, should a large-scale conflict between NATO and Russia break out, and amid a long-standing warning by the alliance that Moscow could be capable of launching an attack in 2029. Moscow has rejected any suggestion that it might be preparing for war with the Western military alliance, but the latest incursions of Russian jets and drones into NATO territory has raised fears of escalation. Germany's Surgeon General Ralph Hoffmann said the numbers of wounded troops in a potential conflict would depend on the intensity of battle and which military units were involved. Realistically, we're talking about a figure of around 1,000 wounded troops per day, he told Reuters in an interview. Notice how he parsed this, folks. Notice how he parsed this. It would depend on which military units were involved. What does he mean by that? What do you think he means by that? He doesn't mean European units, folks. We're planning for 1,000 wounded troops a day. Let me caveat the way it really is. We're planning for 1,000 wounded American troops a day. That's what he's saying. With, of course, Americans being able to sit up there and give us the money for it, funding the bill for it, doing all the hard work for it. Yeah, we're planning on just sitting back and watching the Americans take care of all this. That's what he's saying. That's why he parsed it the way he did. European militaries, including their medical service, have stepped up preparations for potential conflict with Moscow in wake of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Europe's biggest conflict since World War II. Germany is also consistently adapting its medical training, incorporating lessons from the Ukrainian war. Yeah, let the Americans handle it. That's what he's coming up with. The nature of warfare has changed dramatically in Ukraine, Hoffman said, citing a shift from gunshot injuries to blast wounds and burns caused by drones, and loitering munitions. Ukrainian soldiers described the drone-infested corridor covering about 10 kilometers on either side of the front line as the kill zone because remotely piloted unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, deployed by both sides can swiftly spot and neutralize targets. The Ukrainians often cannot evacuate their wounded fast enough because drones are buzzing overhead everywhere, Hoffman said, underscoring the need for prolonged stabilization of injured soldiers, sometimes for hours at the front lines. But he's not talking about German. For this reason, the German military is looking at hospital trains and buses and expanding medical evacuation by air, he said. Really? We're talking about expanded operations by air? You mean something that the United States has been doing since the Korean War? Since the 1950s? 75 years ago? Is that what you're telling us now? The wounded would undergo initial treatment at the front line before being transported back to Germany for care predominantly in civilian hospitals. He estimated the need for approximately 15,000 hospital beds from German hospitals, total capacity of 440,000. You're talking 1,000 a day, and you need 15,000 beds, which is saying that you expect these people to be returned to the front lines at 1,000 a day. You're expecting them to be returned to the front lines in 2 weeks. That the average stay is going to be 2 weeks or less. Boy howdy, boy howdy. Thank goodness for the Germans. Boy, they're really looking out for this. Well, boy, they're on this. They're on this. All right. One, in a little note to these people, so that would mean that the German army, 64,000 strong, could fight for only 2 months before they were completely eliminated. It sounds like they're preparing now, which is good. And as with the past 2 world wars in Europe, if America thinks it can just stay out of it, then it's probably just wishful thinking. Russia can't win the war in the Ukraine, but they're going to declare war on NATO? Something just doesn't make sense here, says Mark. The comments. The Germans have gone bonkers, says Krish. Porsche has stopped making their wonderful cars because of the increased energy costs due to buying liquid natural gas, all right, instead of cheap Russian gas, all right, has made it too expensive. Now they will have more tanks, but since Germany can't make steel any longer, no cheap Russian gas, all right, there's no there's no domestic steel. They need to buy it from Sweden. Tanks are not useful any longer because of the drones, but they shut down autos for tanks anyways. Enough of that nonsense, folks. Enough of that nonsense. Germany is not preparing for war. 64,000 troops, less than 500 main battle tanks. And no, tanks are not irrelevant because of drones. Okay? You're seeing drone warfare take place in the Ukraine because the Ukrainians do not have the capability of sweeping the drones from the sky. That's a reality. Okay? The problem with the air war going on with the Ukrainians and the Russians is the Russians, okay, people don't realize this, but Russia really did, and why I don't know, but they really did believe that their air power was equivalent to the Americans' air power. That the American Armed Forces air cover, all right, as we've demonstrated in Iraq, as I've demonstrated in Afghanistan, as we've demonstrated numerous times, that their air power was equivalent to it. It's not. It's not even close. And what you see is even though Russia has air dominance, they don't have air supremacy. They have dominance. They are they have more air power than the Ukrainians do, but they don't have air dominance. I mean, or air supremacy, where they pretty much anytime something moves from the Ukrainians, they sweep the skies to the Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, have prevented air supremacy from the Russians, and it's not for the reasons people think. It's not because, okay, that the the Russians are running out of pilots. The problem is that the Russians are literally running out of planes. They're running out of aircraft, especially aircraft they expected to use to help support ground operation, helicopters. The ability to use helicopters, all right, was something that the Russians, and you saw it in the first part of the war, were counting on heavily for their ground operations and ground support. And they found out two things about it. One, their ground support operations, even without all the other problems, their ground support operations absolutely sucked. Were absolutely terrible. That all it took for the Ukrainians, all right, to prevent simple things such as transportation of troops to critical areas via airframes was U.S. intelligence. U.S. identifying areas where these planes were at or where these helicopters were at, and thereby allowing the Ukrainians to marshal their air defenses, in this case, manpacks, to destroy the Russian initiative. The second thing was, as they were trying to utilize these forces, they were not nearly as effective as Americans because we trained to do this in combined arms operations where it's seamless movement. When you encounter a strong point, there's somebody with a laser to sit up there and target, and then a laser guided weapon is used from an airframe somewhere behind the front lines to eliminate the hard point that you're trying to get rid of. But even when you got the technology, if you haven't trained with it and you don't know how best to utilize it and what it takes to utilize it effectively, you can't engage in it. And believe it or not, and I know people don't want to hear this, Russia has not pulled out all the stops to crush the Ukrainians. What do you mean by that, oh man? What do you mean by that? They've been fighting all over. Trust me. What else does Russia have? Russia has fleets of heavy bombers. They could just pack them full of dumb bombs and do B-52 arc-light type raids. Do linebackers left and right on this major city and that major city and absolutely destroy every major city in the Ukraine. Yes, they would lose a lot of bombers, but they could do it. They could overwhelm in just a week, overwhelm the the serious air defenses. Yes, they would lose a lot of bombers. They would lose a lot of equipment, and that is the problem. Russia is absolutely shocked, I say, by how much of their air power is being destroyed when it goes into certain areas. Part of it's because of their doctrine, but a good portion of it is because they decided, well, we don't need to worry about this, and they're realizing how vulnerable their air assets really are. And when your air assets are that vulnerable, they can be swept from the skies in order to, quote unquote, maintain any kind of air dominance. You can't continue to suffer these losses. Russia suffered those losses in World War II against the German Luftwaffe. Okay? And they just kept using them. Why? Because they had the industrial might to do it. And they had the industrial know-how to do it. They also had the Americans and the British bombing the holy hell out of the defense industries, all right, inside of Germany, limiting their ability to counter it. In this case here, the United States has got state-of-the-art killing weapon systems and air defense systems, and we've given it to the Ukrainians, taught them how to use it, and basically said, "Here you go." As a consequence, Putin is terrified from an air perspective of dealing with this. That and the quote-unquote wonder weapon, the hypersonic missile that everyone was terrified of, turns out it's just another missile. There's no advantage to it. Now, we learned this a long time ago, by the way. People don't even know this. The United States Army did a cost analysis one day because we had a brand new artillery shell we could fire 20 miles away. And because it was laser guided, we could actually flatten trash cans from 20 miles away. Pinpoint targeting. But then somebody did a cost analysis and said, you know what? We can blow up that trash can a hell of a lot cheaper if we just fire 6 rounds. Generally, why do we need this kind of specific targeting capability in a war? This is called the Copperhead round, for those who don't know. Fired from the 155s. Pinpoint accuracy is only necessary when you're trying to hit something very specific for a strategic purpose. To gain a tactical advantage, you're going to sit up there and target strategic infrastructure for a tactical advantage. That's when you utilize, or should be utilizing, pinpoint munitions. It's one of the problems that we're having when we run out of major units to fight and you're dealing with a freaking insurgency, because pinpoint freaking pinpricks don't fix any of that. They don't solve that problem. You've got to come up with a different solution. Now, Saturday I missed talking about this story. I wanted to talk about this story, but let's talk about it now. Hegseth's purge of service members cheering Charlie Kirk's killing comes under heavy scrutiny. The Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's campaign to oust service members celebrating or mocking the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk online has already seen at least 8 people suspended or placed under investigation, with legal experts warning of a chilling effect on freedom of speech. Right there tells me that the guy who wrote this story, let's see who wrote it here, Elaine Mitchell, or you can see the name right here, Elaine Mitchell, at the top of the thing. Good old Elaine Mitchell here. She's and I assume it's a she. She's an idiot. You obviously never served in the military. You don't have freedom of speech in the military at all. And it's not just a matter of losing your job if you sit up there and violate that. You can go to jail. Period. Sure, they can separate you. They can hand you a dishonorable discharge. They can do a lot of those things as well. But they can also sit up there and go, you know what? You violated the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and guess what? You're going to jail. You're going to Fort Leavenworth. You can't walk up to your boss and say, go F off. Try it. If you're one of these idiots in the military today, okay, and you think you've got freedom of speech, just go tell your boss to F off in front of everybody. Go walk up to the colonel or walk up to the general and tell him to F off or her to F off. Are you encouraging them to do it? If you're stupid enough to do that, I don't want you in the military, to be honest. If you're dumb enough to listen to that comment and say, oh, yeah, that's a good idea, I'm going to take him up on that advice, you're an idiot. And I don't want you with weapon systems in your hand. You don't have freedom of speech. And see, the person who wrote this isn't writing it from an honest perspective. They are trying to infer something simply because they have a political agenda. This is what you call propaganda. But a witch hunt for people who criticize someone that the Trump administration is lionizes is extremely dangerous, as it threatens to remove a long-held apolitical nature of the military. Really? According to Rachel Van Langdon, a former Air Force judge advocate. All right. Really? Tell that to McChrystal. Well, who's McChrystal? What are you talking about? Oh, man. Once upon a time, we had a dumbass named General McChrystal. And General McChrystal came from the Special Forces. That's where his basic, formative military years came from. And personally, this guy, when the bullets are flying, is standing there tough and proud and saying, "Let's go, men, let's continue on." But socially, he was an idiot. He was a moral coward. Consequently, this is the kind of person that good old Barack Hussein Obama thought would be perfect to run the situation in Afghanistan. Until members of his staff's commentary, that was them just talking to themselves, but in front of a reporter for the Rolling Stone magazine, printed what they said. And good old McChrystal was then found himself on the outs with the Obama administration and was subsequently sacked. And the members who were engaging this were prosecuted under UCMJ. But apparently this Rachel Van Langenham, apparently as a judge advocate, she doesn't seem to have any freaking clue what the hell she was doing, which tells you, first of all, what the hell were they hiring people like this for? Because she's obviously clueless. Well, she's a judge, you can't say that about no man. Yeah, I can. You wonder why I hate Zoomies? You wonder why I dislike them? This is one of the reasons why. Because you get jerks like this. And I'm not playing Barrack's lawyer here. I'm just telling you things I saw. From Bloomberg. Patients will wait longer. $100,000 visa fee risks worsening the doctor shortage. The Trump administration's $100,000 fee for high-skilled visa applicants threatens to worsen the shortage of U.S. doctors and make it harder for rural hospitals to operate, medical groups warned. The fee for H-1B visas risks shutting off the pipeline of highly trained physicians that patients depend on, especially in rural or underserved communities, said the American Medical Association President Bobby Mukamala, all right, a Michigan head and neck surgeon. Really? Not enough in American doctors. Gee, I wonder why. So we're going to hire doctors, even though we have the best medical training in the world in the United States. We're going to hire doctors from where? India? Nigeria? South Africa? China? Really? Mukala called international medical graduates a critical part of our physician workforce. Really? Mukala. Mukamala. Excuse me. Really? Sounds to me like you guys in the AMA are the problem, Bobby. Sounds to me like you failed to see this even as a, how do I put this? An opportunity. Practicing medicine in this country is ridiculous today due to leftists such as Bobby Mukamala. You can't say that, no man. You don't know if he's a leftist. Yeah, I got a pretty good idea he's one. Got a really good idea that he's one. Have no doubt in my mind he's a leftist. Why? Because he's already indicated it with his commentary in this post from Bloomberg. You see, he's not really caring. He's trying to say, "Oh, the underserved communities are going to get it the worst." Hmm. Rural communities. It's the rural community. Dude, have you ever even been in a rural community? Do you even know what a rural community is? I don't think people understand what a rural community is. A lot of people think that Columbia, Ohio, or Canton, Ohio, are small communities, small rural communities. They are not. They may be small communities in comparison to large cities like Cleveland or Cincinnati. And I can't argue that aspect of this, but they're not by no means rural. They're suburbs. They're suburbia. They're a type of suburbia that exists on its own. A rural community probably has a county hospital, and it's the only hospital in a 100-mile radius. Well, diameter. Is that what he's talking about? That they're getting all the foreigners? The foreigners are willing to go there? France recognizes Palestinian statehood at a UN meeting to revive peace efforts. France recognized Palestinian statehood on Monday at the start of a high profile meeting at the United Nations aimed at galvanizing support for a two state solution to the Middle East conflict. More nations are expected to follow in defiance of Israel and the United States. President Macron announcement in the UN General Assembly Hall received loud applause from the more than 140 leaders in attendance. The Palestinian delegation, including its UN ambassador Riyad Mansour, could be seen standing and applauding as the declaration was made. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, was also seen applauding on live camera view after the United States government banned him from attending the UN gathering in person. Okay, so you want a two state solution. The United States has worked at a two state solution for 5 decades. The Palestinians were given the West Bank. The Palestinians were given half of Jerusalem, and they decided to continue the fight under Yasser Arafat. They rejected it. Oh, they applaud now, but they're not applauding it because for any other reason than to sit up there and go, okay, we get to continue to attack Israel. You see, if you're going to sit up there and declare war, and they have, and you're going to say they're a nationhood unto themselves, okay, they're a nationhood that has now declared war on another sovereign nation, okay, and what business do you have as the UN from siding with the Palestinians? Well, they're losing the war. They're dying. There's famine. There's this. There's that. Oh, so basically, there's some humanitarian reason for doing it. Uh-huh. You know, the UN, where the UN went in, all right, with the full knowledge of actually helping the murdering savages, and 140 of them were cheering. 140 nations were all cheering at the Assembly Nation. You want to know why we need to pull out of the UN? We need to pull out of the UN completely and pull all of our funding and tell Macron and the rest of the Europeans, you fund it. You fund it. We should kick the entire UN, which is nothing but a spy network for foreigners in this country, and get rid of every freaking piece of it. You know who wants it? Give it to the Canadians. Let them have it. Have at it. Tell the people that the United States isn't funding a damn dime anymore and that they can get the money from Canada, which loves to stab us in the back. Let the Canadians fund the American role. Let the Canadians pay their fair share. Just putting it out there. From Wired. I thought I knew Silicon Valley. I was wrong. Tech got what it wanted by electing Trump. A year later, it looks like a suicide pact from Stephen Levy. I love listening to these freaking people whine. For decades, Mark Lemmy's life as an intellectual property lawyer was orderly enough. He was a professor at Stanford University and has consulted for Amazon and Google and Meta. I always enjoyed that the area I practice has largely been apolitical. Bullshit. But in January, Lemmy made a radical move. I have struggled with how to respond to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook's descent into toxic masculinity and neo-Nazi madness. What you have is a deranged leftist loon who, oh, he's a lawyer. What a flippin' surprise. Oh, he stopped fact checking and started hanging out at Mar-a-Lago because he wasn't fact checking even then. He was lying, Marky. Lemmy Winks? That's a good name for the guy. Lemmy Winks. Mark Lemmy Winks. I know it's Lemley, but I'm calling him Lemmy Winks. Because that's what he is. Lemmy Winks. Lemmy Winks, the rodent who happily travels in the anal cavities of men. For those who don't know, it's a South Park reference. It's a joke. But this guy's a disgusting piece of flotsam. I can tell already. The fact that you were saying fact checking from Facebook, which had no intention of actual fact checking, it was all opinion, all right, laden bullshit, and it was all one sided, left wing. And where was he? Oh, he was a Stanford professor. And I'll tell you something else. As an intellectual property guy, it's all bullshit anyway. And I'm very serious about this. The abuse of intellectual property by these very people, Lemley being one of them, without a recognition that technology has changed the dynamic and necessity for copyright, it goes a long way to show the damage that assholes like this guy have done. I would love to have a discussion in front of this guy, all right, and go over exactly why his view of this is asinine. When I met Lemley at his office at Stanford this July, he was looking looking vacation ready in a Hawaiian t-shirt. In the half year since he fired Meta, all right, a few powerful people have followed his lead. Privately, they tell him, "You go." Publicly, they're gone. Lemley, all right, has even considered how he might be gone if things get bad for anti-Trumpers. Everybody I've talked to has a potential exit strategy, he says. I could get citizenship here or there. Oh, good. Let me tell you something about intellectual property, folks. Why was intellectual property deemed different than a patent? See, a patent, you can only maintain a patent and can't be copied for 7 years plus an additional 7 years. All right, if you apply. So if you make a device, all right, you have 14 years to recoup the money for the prototype. But intellectual property, that was 99 friggin' years. Now, why was that? Well, the reason was cost and distribution. The risk you were taking to publish something, all right, for a publisher to actually recoup his investment was significantly higher than someone who patents something and can start cranking out his patent for sale left and right. It's not saying that his patent will be sellable, but the risk to the manufacturer, in this case, the risk to the publisher, was much higher. Because the distribution costs were significant. A book, to publish a book in the 1950s and get it into where people are reading it, was far more expensive. All right. And the publisher had to produce hundreds of thousands of copies that may never sell. So the risk was much higher. To accommodate that risk, the reward was, we're going to give you a longer period of time to recoup your investment. But the cost of distribution of intellectual property today is virtually zero. It's the cost of a few electrons. The dynamic has utterly shifted, and yet assholes like Lemmywinks here keep thinking, "Oh no, we're sacrosanct, we're sacrosanct. You can't come after me. Oh, AI is killing us." The same thing when you talk about intellectual property. The same thing applies for movies. The same thing applies for music. The cost of distribution of a record was a hell of a lot more than it is, oh, look, a download. The distribution costs are non-existent today. Publishers are taking literally no risk whatsoever. But see, Lemmywinks and the rest of his cabal, they see it as, well, this is our parasitical way of money all through the future. And the fact that he's running around, well, I can get citizenship here, or I can get citizenship there, because the Cheeto Führer. That's someone who's absolutely deranged. Tell me he's not a leftist deranged lunatic. Oh, he's an anti-Trumper. Oh, well, there's Republicans too that are anti-Trumpers. They're left-wing. There's a lot of things you can argue about with Trump. But you don't have somebody that's a conservative telling you, well, I'm going to abandon the country because of Trump. You don't have conservatives saying, I'm going to abandon the country because of Bill Clinton or because of Obama. They're going to fight for the country. Something leftists, all they know about fighting as long as somebody else is doing it. As long as their little frickin' socialist minions are running around, that's perfect. Themselves? No. They're not going to get involved. Farmers raise concern after key crop becomes nearly impossible to grow, a nationwide problem. Impacts of the UK's historically hot and dry spring and summer months are still being felt into the fall as farmer and livestock producers have been feeling the pinch of lower than usual grass yields. With the summer winding down, experts have confirmed that what many had already known from personal experience. The summer in 2025 was the UK's hottest ever. Making matters worse, the scorching summer came on the heels of what the Met Office, the UK's National Meteorological Service, has declared to be the country's hottest spring ever. The dry, hot growing months have led to greatly diminished yields for the fall harvest, which has hurt grass farmers and those who rely on local hay to feed their animals. We are about 60% down on where we should be, and we supply a lot of equine yards in the area. It's been tough, said Ollie Morris, a hay seller. All right. Morris called the shortage a nationwide problem. Really? Really? It's a drought! It's a drought! It's a drought! The world's coming to an end! La la la! Oh my God! The world is dying! Everything's not green! Everything is brown! I see you, Sixer. By the way, Hail Hydra. If you want to come in, feel free. You can banter with me. You can try and protect your farmers. This is what you call reality. And I would venture to say that the reason you're having problems with hay has more to do with your farming regulations than it does with the weather and the climate. We grow hay, of course, in America. We grow alfalfa. We even have tractors that make bales of this stuff, just like this. I actually worked with a baler like this at one point in my early young life, where it rolled up and made hay bales, and then you had to go out and get them. Now I'll tell you right now, from the way this looks here, you do things differently than we do. You grow differently than we do. All right, from the looks of this right here, very similar device. By the way, these things are dangerous. Okay, people don't realize this. That these things are these things kill more people, more farmers, and remove limbs and digits from more farmers than anything else. Specifically, the what you see is the PTO shaft, and then inside of this PTO shaft is a cutter and a rammer. And there are people who, when you're not watching what you're doing, they do stupid things. All right, and they put their hands where they know better than to put them. They do things when they know better than what to do. And they do things in a hurry. They try and do things in a hurry. When you get in a hurry on a farm, you're in a lot of trouble. For those who don't know, I grew up on a farm. I know this. Like I said, I've thrown hay bales, especially wet ones, up. Wet hay is heavy as hell. Even dry hay is a pain in the ass because you are going to be itchy and scratchy all freaking day long. But if you're complaining about the yields being down 60%, really? Then you're doing something wrong. Because it isn't the hot weather. In fact, for Britain, you guys, because of your growing season and so forth, and the amount of rain you get, even the amount of rain in this hot time, grass grows in heat. It grows fast in heat. You're either using the wrong grass because you've said, well, we don't want this type of grass around us. I'm telling you, it's a regulation that's caused that this is a regulation issue, not a freaking weather issue. The UK hay shortage is just one example of the impacts that rising global temperatures have on a wide range of industries, and it's been indicative of the sort of challenges the world will increasingly face as heat becomes more severe. For decades, experts have warned that releasing large quantities of heat-trapping pollution into the atmosphere would cause the global average temperatures to increase, making extreme weather events like heat waves more severe. As scientists, we talk about the future of climate change, but we don't talk enough about what's already happened, said Richard Ellis, a professor of crop production at the University of Reading. Gee, I wonder if you have the same problem with your universities that we have with ours, where the eggheads who've never worked a farm come up with all these wonderful solutions on how stuff's supposed to go. You're lacking in hay production, okay? Well, it's weather related. Welcome to weather. You had an area of a drought this year. Next year it's going to be too much rain. That's the way weather goes. And to say things like, well, the climate is changing. The climate has never been not changing. It's never been 100% stable. Only a clown would think that it was. And as far as hay for feed goes, there's other things to grow. Silage is just one of them. Just pointing out. More Macron news. France seeks mutually acceptable accord on next-gen fighter progress. France said it's fully committed to reaching a mutually acceptable solution with Germany and Spain this year on the next phase of the Future Combat Air System as prospects for the next generation fighter project remain troubled amid infighting amongst industrial partners. France, Germany, Spain, and the companies involved are fully mobilized to prepare phase two of the program, which includes building a demonstrator of the combat aircraft at the heart of the system, the French Armed Forces Ministry said. France earlier this year asked Germany and Spain to redesign their FCAS cooperation to focus on strengthening industrial leadership in order to meet a deadline for future fighter to enter service in 2040 and onwards. Dassault Aviation, the French industrial partner for the fighter part of the program, has repeatedly said wrangling over work share with partner Airbus is causing delays. Really? So, getting the next gen fighter in 1940 up and running is what it is. Well, I got the next gen fighter, and well, we as the Europeans, we're going to sit up there and put the German Eurofighter out there. We're going to be able to take on the American fighter systems and everything, and we don't want to buy from America. Okay. We don't want to work with America either. They won't let us steal. Really? You guys have stolen so much from us already. The climate has changed. The climate has changed, folks. There's a world of hurt coming down. There's a world of hurt coming down. It is what it is. Okay, well, I've been going for about an hour now, a little over an hour. I think I've talked enough. I hope that I'm not going to bother getting into anything else today. I'm sure there'll be something more to deal with tomorrow, so we'll worry about tomorrow when it happens. Hope you all have a good day. Carry on, and I'll talk